Thanks for tuning into A Better World. I'm your host, Luis Acevedo, and don't forget to subscribe to the blog at loseview.blogspot.com. Today, I want to talk about something that is rather encouraging and should be uplifting and provide hope, especially to those who think this is going to just be a total tyrannical takeover, which it may be, but there are indicators that that may not be the case. So, the United Nations has sort of been silent regarding this COVID 19. Maybe not every agency, but the one that is best suited for things like this and designed for things like this, the Security Council, has been. Until today, I believe they're going to have a meeting, and this is after months of the disease being spread. And it is not at the behest, this is key, it is not at the behest of Trump, Xi, or Putin. It is by lower ranking nations that are non permanent members of the Security Council requesting the meeting. And so I guess they're going to have some virtual meeting today talking about what they're going to do in order to mitigate the spread and how we can work as a global unit to combat this invisible enemy. The good news is the three superpowers didn't request the meeting. They wanted to take care of it on their own rather than forming some global coalition to attempt and mitigate the spread. Like the Obama administration back in 2014 during the Ebola outbreak, they ended up stating that the Ebola disease is or was a security threat to the world and also to world peace. And so they try to mitigate the spread of it, join forces with other nations, but that isn't taking place anymore. So the fear and suspicion of a global government forming out of this mess is, still looming. It's still there. It's still, a concern, but it appears that the chances of that taking place, especially after this, are reducing because we're seeing a rise in nationalism, especially in the United States with President Trump putting America first, or at least making that his slogan. People resonate to that very well. And then China, they're very nationalistic, so is Russia. And with China, they are actually in charge of the Security Council, I believe, as of March, or only in March. I'm not really sure how that works, but they were and maybe still are leading the Security Council in the United Nations, which drives a couple Western nations crazy because they don't think China deserves it, when I think they're just insecure of their power. They're scared they're going to lose it. Their power is in jeopardy. And I personally think it may be better with China at the helm than the United States, simply because China is more nationalistic and will allow countries to do what they're going to do. I know you can bring up Africa and say, well, what about the debt trap in Africa? Yeah, we've been doing that to them as well, but nobody's talking about that. What about France? What about England? All these other countries that are doing exactly what China's doing to Africa. China's doing nothing different. And then you're going to say, well, what about the human rights they're violating with Muslims and concentration camps? Well, we have Guantanamo Bay in America, where there's probably some terrorists that who really aren't terrorists that are in there but are called terrorists. And the way they get criticized now for human organ harvesting. The United States has been doing that for a while too. There's a black market. It happens everywhere. I mean, it is what it is. China is not doing anything the United States isn't doing. Now, maybe there's different security measures being implemented over in China, and it's more draconian and authoritative. Yeah, probably, and it's more obvious than it is in America that we have so many restrictions, whereas the Chinese, the ambiguity of what you can say and what you can do isn't there like it is in America, which that's an argument for another day, and it possibly is a better thing. But anyway, so China didn't call this meeting, and they're in charge of the Security Council, at least as of in March, and they could have in March. But they didn't. Neither did the United States or Russia, and that is reassuring. That means people want their countries to do well. Not saying they don't want the world to do well, but they want where their family is and where their home is to do well. It's hard to convince people to care about people who are thousands of miles away from them and have no interactions whatsoever, and they are just some sort of, not an abstract thought, but a distant thought. Whereas the immediate effect of what's going on in their country is more important than what's going on in, say, Syria, or Syria, or Siberia, or Thailand. We're going to care more about what's happening, in my case, in Ohio than I would in California, even. Right? So it's just natural for people to want where they stay to improve and become better, and for their leaders to be more concerned about their local constituents as opposed to the global population as a whole. Not saying we can't do our part to help improve, the world's standard of living, but we need to take care of ourselves first. And that's what we're seeing right now, especially when you look over at the EU. You have Italians. There's videos going over the internet and stuff where they are completely just desecrated the flags of the EU. They're burning them, and the sentiment of leaving the EU is rising tremendously. For Italy, I think there's rumors of Spain doing that as well. England, as we all know. It looks like globalism is dying, and that's very, very awesome. Hopefully that will continue, and hopefully nationalism will continue to rise. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you like this, and I will see you guys later. Peace.